name is Cara Tobe. I use she, her pronouns. I am running on the Groundwork Slate, and I'm a proud member of Louisville DSA. So Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah, I'm also the co-chair of, or one of the co-chairs of the Green New Deal Campaign Commission, which is one of DSA's national priority bodies. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation and can't wait to talk more about labor.
Okay, to Megan.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Megan Romer. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently an at-large member. I'm in the sort of rural region between Ithaca and Syracuse, New York, and central New York. Before that, I did a brief stint in Bronx and Upper Manhattan, but I started organizing in DSA in Southwest Louisiana. So I've been in 3 very different sorts of situations: small chapter, very big, well, biggest chapter, and then at large. I'm also the co-chair of the National Mutual Aid Working Group and a mom of a teenager, which is new and terrifying.
Okay, next Rashad, and then after Rashad, Alex.
What's good, comrades? I'm Rashad X. I'm a Black decolonial Marxist, use he, him pronouns. And within DSA, I'm the co-chair of a small Midwestern chapter on the steering committee of the Growth and Development Committee. And I'm a proud executive committee member of the Afro-Socialist and Socialist Color Caucus. But most importantly, I'm running with Amy W. on the Marxist Unity Group Slate.
Okay, next Alex.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexander Hernandez, he, él. I like to say I was first radicalized in the drum up to the Iraq War II in 2001, 2002, but I wasn't organized until I joined the labor movement. 2011, organizing my workplace, I earned my IATSE card. A few years later, Bernie inspired me to run for leadership, and I was elected to the executive board of Hollywood's Local 44, IATSE. And currently, I am a business representative for one of the Actors Union. It's been a heck of a week, very exciting. And I'm looking forward to sharing with folks just what's going down there and try to loop it in because I think it's very important and it sort of ties into a lot of discussion tonight.
Thank you, Philip.
Hey, everyone. My name is Philip Locker, he, him. I am a candidate for the NPC, and I am the former co-chair of Seattle DSA. And previously also was one of the organizers of the Seattle DSA Labor Working Group. I'm a member of a Reform and Revolution Caucus, and just a little bit of my background in the labor movement. I was the spokesperson for 15 Now, which was a grassroots campaign that played a decisive role in winning the first $15 an hour minimum wage in the country in Seattle in 2014. And before that was the political director of Shama Sawant's campaign, where she was the first socialist elected to the Seattle City Council in 100 years. And I have a long time socialist going back before that, was active in the Labor Party in the 1990s, and excited about the resurgence of worker organizing and militancy that we're seeing, and excited to build on it.
Thanks, Philip. Next up, Melina, and then last, Laura.
Hi, comrades. My name is Melina Herrera, she, her pronouns. I'm a member of Socialist Majority Caucus and running on the SMC Slate for NPC. I'm a member of Detroit DSA, just finished up 3 years serving on the steering committee, 2 of which were as co-chair. I'm active in the multiracial organizing committee and currently organizing my workplace with help from our wonderful comrades at EWOC, or the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, if you don't know what that is. Yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Laura.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Wadlin. I'm running on the slate of Bread and Roses Caucus, and last year I was the co-chair of Portland DSA, where I helped lead our strike support campaigns. I'm an ESL teacher at Portland Community College and a lead steward in my union, AFT Local 2277, and I've been a rank and file organizer in the labor movement since 2016.
Okay, thank you so much. Doing awesome on time. I'm gonna So I'm going to kick it to Dan and Ellie to mod the first section. Dan, where'd Ellie go? Ellie, raise your hand. Where did Ellie go? I don't need to be on spotlight for this.
All right. The first question is, on the section about the railroad stuff, getting that out of the way first. So by now, the controversy regarding DSA members of Congress in relation to the railroad strike has been thoroughly discussed. In a few sentences, could you please state your views on this controversy and its impact on DSA over the last year? How would expulsion of Rep. Jamal Bowman and other elected officials help or hurt working people, DSA, and the cause for socialist revolution? So we've got 7 speakers. If you could just start with 1 minute each. I will start with Cara.
All right. Yeah, hi. So to me, really, the events surrounding the rail vote is more indicative of the state of our working relationships with our electeds rather than the state of the relation to labor. Our nationally endorsed federal electeds are really important to the work of DSA. Actually, one of the biggest spikes in DSA membership growth was when AOC won her election in 2018. So it's critical that we continue to have a presence on Capitol Hill and strengthen that presence, first and foremost, by developing a really coherent and cohesive and working Socialist in Office program, so we can be really cohesive in our demands and in our actions. I also think too that we really need to make sure that we're growing the relationship between all of our electeds as well. Right now, there's not a whole lot of communication between them, and so I do think that that is important. And in terms of expulsion, I think it's critical that we do have that voice. The majority of Americans relate to politics and hear politics more from the federal level. So having that socialist voice at that level is really critical.
You're right about on time. And Megan?
Yeah, thanks. So I think there are a bunch of different parts to the question. I think the question of expulsion is a bit of a straw man. We're not a line org. We're not throwing people out for what their views are. That said, we do have a lot to say about how we are relating to electeds and who we're endorsing. And I think, there are different parts of this, but I think one of the issues that we have is we have this like kind of all or nothing approach to a lot of our electeds. Are they like cadre versus are they nothing? Like those are the two things. Like you're either a DSA member on Capitol Hill or you are nothing at all to us. You mean nothing, which first of all isn't even really true. We only kind of think about that on the one side. Anybody who's done organizing in any small city probably has like a sort of friendly city council person who they're working with sometimes. They're not DSA members, but they might be good on housing, but they keep funding the cops. So you're like friendly with them when you can be, and you're not when you're not. We have to figure out how to navigate those relationships. I think the same is true at the federal level. I think our goal is to create more socialists. So if our elected officials are not creating more socialists, or they're only creating more socialists with their actual election, but then they dive to the right, then yeah, we need to reconsider those relationships and what that looks like, and whether an endorsement can only mean one thing, or if there are sort of levels of can somebody be cadre versus a friendly versus a very occasional friendly or whatever. I mean, I think that's a thing we need to figure out how to do.
Yeah, we're letting people go a little long. It's a complicated question, so we'll be a little loose right now, but later on, I think we should be strict about the 1 minute. Everyone's been great so far.
Rashad?
The rail vote allows us to decide if our platform means anything to us. Our democratically decided platform declares that we unequivocally stand for the right to strike. So if our expressed stances do mean something to us, then how can DSA members look other working people in the eye and say we stand for these things? when our electeds do the exact opposite. If we let this hypocrisy continue, rather than moving towards accountability measures, including but not limited to expulsion, it only stands to hurt working people and DSA, because us working people in DSA busting our asses before and after work for this org will be forced to spend our limited time fighting for basic electoral accountability, or we'll see no other choice but to leave, as too many of us already have.
Thank you. Alex?
Hi, everyone. Alexander Hernandez, Pasco Hernando DSA. Forgot to mention that in Florida. So off the cuff, I just want to say the expulsion idea of our electeds, anyone in the squad, is totally foolish. It's a recipe to destroy the org. We want to be a mass org, not a cult handing out discipline towards our members. That's one thing I want to make perfectly clear myself from the other panelists. I also think as far as this, what the outcome and what happened around the controversy, it was plain. The rail workers were not ready to do a nationwide strike. That was clear because there wasn't unanimity across the unions. There's then one thing I'd like to start to tie in the industry. I work in entertainment industry, multiple unions throughout the industry. That's sort of how rail set up, different unions, different crafts. They got to be on the same boat. It's taken years and years of organizing and getting our contracts to line up to get to a point where we're where the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild could go on strike at the same time. Something like that has to happen, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it sure as heck is not going to happen if we cut ourselves from some of the people who are out there, making sure that, one, it got a vote on Congress. It didn't pass. That was part of the strategy, though. And then they continued to organize and now have paid sick leave. So I think let's look at the big picture. We get so caught up on looking inwards that we fight each other when we realize there's a whole world out there that we have to win. Thank you.
Philip?
Alex, you may well be right that the workers weren't ready to strike, but that's for the workers to decide, not for Congress. The government has no business banning workers from striking. And that's what we're talking about. Not whether the union should have decided to go on strike, but whether Congress should have banned, and Joe Biden banned their ability to go on strike. And that is completely unacceptable. We don't need to elect socialists to ban workers from going on strike. The Democrats and Republicans do a wonderful job of that. That's not our job as socialists. I thought it would have been hasty to expel Bowman. Instead, I thought public town halls with Bowman on the Iron Dome and DSA Congress members on the railway strike would have been what would have been useful to have an open debate. The fact that DSA Congress members joined along with the vote to ban the railway strike, I think we have to face up to that, damaged our standing with militant unionists. And the best we can do in that situation is a public condemnation to unambiguously separate DSA to help mitigate that damage. But the main thing is that damage has been done. The main thing is to learn from that setback, but doesn't happen again. I think, unfortunately, haven't made the changes so far that's needed. And under similar conditions, I think we can expect our electeds to act again in a similarly damaging way. And I think that's what we need to change at this convention.
Melina?
Sorry, trouble unmuting. So I think we, in Detroit, at least, we have a kind of different, the controversy didn't really affect us here because Rashida voted the way that she voted. So we were able to like put out a statement and say that was great and move on. Though of course, nationally, it personally, I think that, I prefer to focus on the good things that our electeds do. Like, for example, here in Michigan, repealing right to work was like a really big deal. And I feel like I would rather celebrate those wins rather than get hyper-focused on so-called bad votes, especially when we know that, the workers themselves did ask some of these people to vote the way that they did. And then on the question of expulsion, don't want to get into details, but I just chaired a meeting about expelling an elected, and I really do think that expulsion should be saved for just the worst of the worst. And bad votes can be harmful, but I think we should take them as an opportunity to deepen our relationships with the very few electeds that we have, especially at the federal level. So yeah, I think expulsion should be taken seriously, and it shouldn't be used as, you know, oh, you voted incorrectly and so we're going to expel you. Thank you.
And Laura.
Oh, sorry. So we know now that Nancy Pelosi tried to make bringing the sick leave amendment to the floor conditional on everyone voting to prevent railroaders from striking. So Bowman, AOC, Cori Bush, and even Bernie, which is hard for me to say, led railroaders to believe that there was a real chance of passing sick leave in the Senate if they voted to impose the contract. And that was unrealistic and irresponsible. They should have instead lifted the curtain on these insider moves and exposed Pelosi's repugnant arm twisting to make her side pay a greater price for betraying workers. I'm glad the NPC publicly condemned Bowman's actions and declined to re-endorse him nationally. And we have to take those steps first before considering expelling someone. We need to make it clear to other socialists in office that in cases where a legislative defeat is practically certain, their role is to propagandize and create a political cost for those who stand in our way, rather than attempt procedural maneuvers and parliamentary deals.
Okay,
Thank you all. Yeah, maybe I'll do the next question, Dan. Sure. So if you felt like you didn't have enough time for that, well, we're going to take basically the same question from a different angle. We're just going to hone in on something that some people did comment on. So reporting in Working Mass and elsewhere found that the members of Congress who voted to end the railroad strike, right or wrong, were following the advice of a rank and file caucus. To what extent should socialists follow the advice of rank and file caucuses? And Cara and then Megan, please.
All right, yeah. So we do absolutely need to be listening to the workers who are on the ground and in the union. We just can't be assuming that we know what's best when we aren't the ones that are in the room or on the shop floor. We're not the ones there organizing, it's them, it's the union. We should listen, we should be assessing what aligns best with our strategy as DSA, and then we need to be moving accordingly. We should also be encouraging our members to be as active as possible in their unions, and that includes joining rank and file caucuses that will help grow the labor movement and socialist movements and also tie them together. So to keep it very short and sweet, you know, we need to be listening to the workers, we need to be listening to them, and you know, specifically in regards to this rail vote, yes, it is their decision, and it's not to someone's point earlier, it is not on government to decide whether they can or cannot strike. It is the union's decision to make, and so just like that, we need to be respecting union decisions as well.
Great, thank you. And then Megan next, and then after Megan will be Philip.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, you know, just to get back, this issue really framed a problem that we have, which is that we are not well connected to our members in Congress, and we are not that well connected to a lot of rank and file union caucuses also. If we're not getting this information, we're not in this room. We are not, you know, able to make these connections. We should be in that room. That said, because we have done such a poor job of connecting with our socialists in office, especially at the federal level, we're trusting their consciences over any sort of democratic process, over the, you know, sort of democracy of all of our members to make decisions about what we think should happen. We're trusting their, you know, chief aide to make the best deal with Nancy Pelosi's chief aide. That doesn't work. And it's outrageous to me that we just had an NPC sit there for 2 years and not create the Federal Socialist in Office Committee that they were supposed to create by convention mandate. So time for a change, time to like do this stuff.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Megan, and then Philip, and then Melina after Philip.
I think it's clear we need to it's critical that we help build rank and file caucuses and we work closely and listen to them and actively reach out, get their input, no doubt about that. And in 90% of cases or more, elected socialists should follow their advice. But no one truly believes. People may say it, but I guarantee you there will be cases when you don't believe it, that this can be done in an unthinking way. We are elected socialists, need to evaluate things from the point of view of the socialist movement and the overall general interest of the working class. Rashida Tlaib did the right thing by voting for the paid sick leave and against banning a strike. And I haven't seen anyone say that she damaged the struggle of the railway workers. She might not have taken the advice of the very good comrades in the rank and file caucuses. She should discuss with them, work with them, but socialists also have an obligation to protect the interests of the overall working class, which is we need to promote the bigger picture. We stand against the capitalist state interfering in the rights of workers to strike, period. End of story. We have no business in telling workers when they can or cannot strike. That's for workers and their unions to decide. And if a union makes a mistaken appeal or a rank and file caucus to appeal to socialists to ban their ability to strike, we, in a respectful way, we should listen, we should discuss, we should work with them, but we have an obligation. We don't just do whatever workers want. Majority of workers at one point supported the war on terror. Socialists need to vote against that. I'm sorry for you. I've got news. We're going to take positions. The majority of workers in this country are not yet socialists, and we should promote socialism. So we have an obligation to represent our politics and not just unthinkingly do what people we respect ask us to do on every occasion.
Thank you, Philip. And then Melina, and yeah, I just wanted to highlight at the forum that Phoenix hosted, many people talked about having better communication with elected officials, regardless of where you fall on this exact and how you analyze this. I think that's something seems like everyone can agree on. So please, Melina.
So, I mean, kind of along the same lines, I do think it's very, this question of should we follow the advice of rank and file caucuses, should we follow the lead of workers? I think it's very dependent on what the rank and file wants us to do. I mean, what if a caucus comes out and says, DSA, you should endorse Biden? I'm gonna say no. But that said, it is, if it, I mean, and it was the case that this rank and file, especially specifically on this, if the rank and file caucus, if most of the workers said, this is how we want you to vote, then I think that is fine to follow. We don't know what it's like on those shop floors, unless we are, and I don't know how many DSA members are part of the particular union, but yeah, I mean, I think it very much depends on what the rank and file caucuses want us to do. If they want our electeds to vote a certain way, I think that's fine, but some of these things, like where it's red lines, like if they want us to send more money to Israel, like, no, we're not going to do that. But yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you all. So for the next question, several months after being denied the right to strike, more than 50%, actually quite a lot more than 50% now, things have been developing, of railroad workers have received paid sick leave through various union victories. Does this mean that the original strategy was successful? Or, yeah, do you know what the original strategy? We should say the original strategy was that this was a Hail Mary. It's like the contract was going to be imposed anyway, so let's try to sneak in an amendment that gives some paid sick leave. So that was the original strategy. And then let's see, for the first person, we would like to start with Rashad, please, and then Alex, and then Laura. Take it away, Rashad.
Many actors and strategies were involved, with some actors who were pursuing the same goals, even divided on the best route to get there. For those that were focused only on the outcome of more workers having sick leave, then they probably succeeded in their original goal through more private leadership deals. And for those who are focused not only on the outcome of more workers having sick leave, but also the process by which they won, with a desired process being some sort of public action, mass action, like a strike, then this is better than what the failure is, than zero workers getting sick leave, but it's still not to where what those strategies are pushing for. Within DSA, we have people in each of these camps, which is part of the reason the Marxist Unity Group Slate believes we should define our labor policy. so we can have a clear purpose to tailor our strategies around. We propose a revolutionary labor strategy, one that declares the purpose of our labor work is to prepare the working class to take political power and establish a democratic socialist republic. With this policy set, it would be clear that DSA and its representatives were on the side of those that were unwaveringly focused on making this win happen through public mass action, a strategy that would have prepared workers in strategic sectors to feel the power they have in our revolutionary process, a strategy that would have required exposing the anti-democratic state and the need for a democratic republic, and a strategy that at minimum would have made it a given for our electeds to have publicly voted to let workers strike.
Thank you, Rashad. And then Alex is next. Please take it away, Alex.
Yeah, on this one, so I mean, the Hail Mary obviously was not successful, but I think the lesson to take from it is something that a comrade told me once, that you never stop campaigning. So what you take what you learned. We did, the Hail Mary was a failure. It didn't pass, but you continue, you carry on, you continue to organize, which is what the rank and file workers did rank and file caucuses, and even DSA members kept showing out. And I know in Boston, there was a big showing for the rail workers and all across the country. And what happened from that is they continued to organize, continued to campaign, and now most of the rail workers that were under this situation now have the paid sick leave. Lesson is to focus on campaigning and the victories, not turning inward and spending all of our time saying, you did something bad, you made the wrong vote, and continuing to harp on, oh, you made the wrong vote, while the world is moving outside of the clubhouse. And that's what we saw the rank and file workers do. They organized, they continued to push, and they made it happen. Now they have sick leave. They're going to continue to push. They're in better situations now because the Rail Workers United, for example, they're trying to push to coalesce the unions to have the various different crafts to be on the same page for the next time the contract comes up, which is key. Building, taking the lessons, what we did wrong, what we can do better, improving on, and this is how we're going to win. We're going to build off of those things as opposed to turning around and saying, what did we not do right? Who's to blame? Let's expel them. And then you've sort of weaned away. Addition by subtraction is not going to get us to a mass party. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I just wanted to add that a lot of people are only getting 4 or 5 days of sick leave. So certainly a lot more needs to be fought. And in regards to, it would have been better if there was a public action, I do want to actually harken back to a point that Alex made, that there was not the sort of preparation necessary to do an actual national strike in the way that we clearly see the Teamsters doing. So that's another thing I would keep in mind regarding this. So, and then lastly for this question, Laura, please take it away.
So it was successful, yes and no. This example demonstrates the massive value of using the platform of office to call attention to rank and file demands. Like, we're all talking about sick leave for railroaders. It was a national topic of discussion because Bernie and the squad and others talked about it in the media. And that added a lot of pressure to the employer to concede something. And that's what it means to be an organizer first and a legislator second. However, it was totally unnecessary to vote to prevent union members from striking. And Rashida Tlaib proved that when she voted no on imposing the TA. That's why I'm wearing my DSA for Rashida shirt today. She deserves a lot of credit for that. The sick leave bill didn't pass the Senate, and it's not realistic to think that it would have, given the number of Republicans that would have been needed to flip. There just wasn't enough political pressure to make that happen, and Republicans and Democrats simply weren't afraid of the consequences of betraying workers. Bernie and the squad could have used their platform to blast Democratic Party leaders as tools of corporations, but instead they stepped in to help Democrats save face, and in the process they confused who was to blame. It should have been a very clear which side are you on moment that helped railroad workers by making it extremely politically costly for anyone to betray them. And when we make a relationship with rank and file union members and caucuses, we should be willing to share with them this honest view and even disagreement on strategy, and attempt to win them over to our theory of change, which rejects legislative insiderism in favor of building a movement that can raise consciousness and force concessions through mass action.
Thank you very much, Laura. As Henry has been trolling in the chat, if you're mad about an answer that somebody gave, well, guess what? You get to be heard. Click on the link there and you can submit a question. Henry, it's all about Henry right now. You've spotlit yourself solely, but that's okay. Looking great, Henry. So while Henry figures that out, yeah, does anyone want to talk a little bit more about how are we going to develop those close relationships with electeds? Tell us your plan to make that happen. Does anybody want to jump in on that? I see Philip with your hand up. Please go ahead, Philip. Henry, how about we just do default no spotlighting? Keep it simple. But go ahead, Philip.
Sorry, I fucked everything up. There's asking Phil to, I don't know how that happened, but there we go.
Yeah, I was blocked from unmuting. Just first, just circling back to the last question. I think also, again, our role as socialists in office is to represent the overall interests of the working class. And it's not, we can't just look at we have to take into account, obviously, the immediate interests, but we also have to protect the long-term interests. We set, Congress and our votes set a precedent that makes it harder in the future, makes it easier for strikes to be banned, not just in this one instance, but that's a terrible, terrible precedent to set. And our job is to be chipping away at that precedent. And there's bigger stakes than just this one contract and winning paid sick leave. And obviously the paid sick leave that's been won, let's remember the workers the RWU was fighting for 15 days. Bernie and Bowman put a legislation for 7 days. And now my understanding is most of the union workers have gotten like 4 or 5 sick days plus using other paid time off. That's not the 15 days they're demanding. It's still a step forward, but far from what's necessary. I'll just put out a plug on your question. I think that an amendment that myself and comrades from Reform and Revolution and MUG put together towards a party-like electoral strategy, which talks about how we can have, and I'll drop the link in the chat, how we can move towards more of a strategy of trying to still make endorsements for many different left-wing candidates, but
I'm going to cut you off in just a sec, Philip. You got to wrap up with this sentence.
Actively try to recruit candidates who are going to represent and be directly accountable to DSA.
Great. And so I see Cara and Melina, or I don't know if Melina, you're taking your hand down, not, but just one more minute to, again, the question is, how are you going to have, make sure we have better relationships with our electeds? So go ahead, Cara. And can you unmute? That's the question. There we go.
Okay, now I'm able to unmute. All right, yes. So I think really, really critically here, we need to have a Socialist in Office committee that is communicating with these electeds on a regular basis. And this is not just communicating over one thing ad hoc. We need to be developing these relationships. Again, I keep using the word cohering, but we need to be cohering this. We need to be cohering the relationships that we have, not as just DSA to one elected to another, but we need to be providing a space and organizing our electeds to be working together as a block and as a socialist caucus within the federal government. So a Socialist in Office committee is really critical there. Actually in Louisville, just this past year, a couple months ago, we started to develop our own Socialist in Office program. I know Louisville is not the US federal government, but we need to be practicing what we preach at every single level. And so if we're developing these standards at our local chapters, in the South, in New York City, where it's really like they're doing incredible work there, we need to be also doing this at our national level with our federal electeds. So I know that's my time, so I'll stop there, but I could go on.
Great. And Melina, do you want to step in on that also?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cara touched upon a lot of what I was going to say about the Socialist in Office program, which 100% we need a Socialist in Office program where we have consistent and constant contact with our electeds. But I think another thing we need to do is, build up those cadre candidates. Like we really need to be looking within our org to see who we can be developing to run for office, in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, so on. I mean, this is a lifetime project for us. And so, and I think we're going to keep bringing Rashida up because she is the best congressperson. But, she does lead development trainings for people who are thinking of running for office. And so I think more of that, if we could get more of our electeds to run those sorts of things where they're teaching people how it actually works when you're in office, how to run a campaign, that is what we need to be doing. Is we need more of us. Not some outsider who comes into the org to seek our endorsement and get our endorsement, but more of us actually being developed to run for those offices.
Melina, what I'm hearing you say is we need more Palestinians in office. That's what I heard.
More brown women.
Heck yeah.
Okay, I can take over, Ellie.
Excellent.
Okay, so Dan and I are going on. Somebody said, are we going to talk about labor? Because we've only been on electoral. We wanted to get this out of the way. So nobody's allowed to talk about the railroad thing for the rest of the meeting, or you'll be banned from DSA. So now we're going to have 20 minutes about, and welcome, if you weren't here for the introduction, welcome to this Working Mass Forum. Dan's going to take the first question. We're going to talk more generally about socialists in the labor movement in this section. And I hope it's been helpful. I've been pasting the sections and the speaking lists. So Dan, go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Next section, Socialist DSA goals, strategy, tactics in the labor movement. So we'll do 1.5 minutes for all of our speakers here, all of our candidates. What is the role of socialists in the labor movement? We'll start with Rashad.
Is it to help workers win material gains now? Absolutely. So much so, our labor work, I would argue, has been even more successful at it than our electoral work. Is the purpose to help build the core of an independent party? Absolutely. So much so that I think we can learn from comrades in Bolivia that have done it. But the Marxist Unity Group Slate believes there's more to our role. We need to have clarity that our role is to prepare workers to take political power, from winning the battle for democracy first within unions to preparing for future militant street action through strikes. Our role must be collected to establishing a goal of a democratic socialist republic, because we gotta learn from the failed British Labour Party that reforming an anti-democratic state can never work. And we gotta learn from the racist past of too many US unions that our struggle is not limited to specific workplaces. With the horizon of a democratic socialist republic, our socialist workers movement can pursue the common interest of all workers, the political power to democratically govern together.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to Alexander and then Philip.
All right. Sorry, having trouble with the unmute. All right. So yeah, I think for the socialist role in the labor movement, right, I think I want to take the kitchen sink approach. I think we should listen and let workers lead their own struggles. I think we need to support both rank and file and union staff, organize the unorganized, and engage in battles for pro-labor legislation. I also think what EWOC does and organizing the unorganized is important. I think that there's broad consensus across the organization that work is very important and crucial. So seeing a lot more of that. For me, it's that key is that first point I brought up, listening to the workers and let them lead their own struggles. I think we often find ourselves getting too far ahead with our theory and practice and all this stuff that goes into it, mostly the theory part. But you have your rank and file strategies and your whatnots. But the reality is, a lot of these unions out here, they're uncontested elections. They're not necessarily a faction or this caucus or that caucus. It's just folks working who care about labor. And I think we need to just get in everywhere we can, make it easier for members to participate and plug in. We talked about leadership development. I think, we have the resources in our people who do this work. Everyone on this call, I believe, at least the panelists have some experience in the labor movement. And then our members at our chapter, our comrades, we need to listen to them, see what their insights are, what we can learn, and share that, pass it on to all of our members, make it easy to plug in. When somebody says, hey, I want to be involved in this labor work, follow up. That's something that often falls through the cracks. We got to follow up. We got to follow up and then follow up again. So the main thing is listen to workers, more you walk, the kitchen sink approach, because frankly, we need everyone. And again, I'll view the example of what I'm doing right now at work with the actors union and the entire industry.
That's
It took,
fine.
oh, I thought we were doing one and okay.
Okay, if we call time next, like maybe you can finish like your sentence. But anyway, thank you. Okay, Philip next.
I think Joe Burns' book, Class Struggle Unionism, does a really excellent job of summarizing what should our role be in the labor movement. The problem is not just that unions are weak or don't know the best organizing methods. Both those problems are true, but there's a deeper problem. They're controlled by business unionists and labor liberal leaders organized in the trade union bureaucracy. And we need to fight as socialists to overcome those limitations with union democracy, class struggle methods, and a fighting program for significant improvements for workers' living conditions. And that includes also fighting for political independence from the Democrats within the labor movement. We have to stop. The labor movement is wasting hundreds of millions of dollars of hard-earned union money and dues, donating to Hillary Clinton in 2016, to Joe Biden in 2020 during the primaries against Bernie Sanders and other corporate Democrats. And instead, we should be backing candidates who really fight for labor. And that includes breaking from a party that's controlled by big business. The last thing I'll say about this is the majority of workers under the Democratic rule of Biden and a Democratic Congress and Senate have seen a fall in living conditions and real wages. And that creates ripe conditions for the success of the Republicans, whether we like it or not. We can't combat that by defending Biden or being his defenders. We instead need to build a working class opposition to the Wall Street Democrats in power and the threat of right-wing Republicans.
Thanks. And then we're going to go to Melina and Laura after Melina.
So winning socialism completely depends on workers, right? We cannot win socialism without workers, period. And I really do, as a working class person, like I don't separate my being a socialist from my being a worker. I think that socialists need to start seeing themselves as workers too. Sometimes, we see these questions where it kind of feels like this separates out our socialism from our place in the working class. And so I want to I want to say that I am a working class person, I am a working poor person, and I am a socialist. I am a working class socialist. And we cannot win socialism without workers. And so therefore, our role as socialists is to be active participants in the labor movement. We need to be not only joining existing unions, but also unionizing our workplaces. I think we're going to keep shouting out EWOC. They do amazing work. We need to invest in EWOC. We need to turn out, if we're not going to be organizing our own workplaces, then us as socialists need to be workplace organizers. And EWOC is a place to do that. So I'm going to plug them again. And yeah, so I think that's my answer is we need to be active participants. We need to be workers ourselves. And this org needs to be ran by working class people. Thank you.
Okay. Laura?
As many socialists as possible should embed themselves in the labor movement primarily as rank and file organizers and aim to become shop floor leaders, particularly in strategic industries. Socialists should work to democratize and energize unions while also bringing the most capable leaders from our workplaces into the socialist movement. This creates a two-way infusion of leadership that you can't get just from being a union staffer or a union supporter. And I'm not just advocating this strategy, I have lived it out. I started what is now a successful reform caucus in my union. I'm leading our strike preparations for later this year, and I've recruited 5 of my coworkers into DSA. We also need to double down on strike solidarity campaigns. DSA members should be actively researching and following labor movement struggles in their area and preparing themselves to support at key moments of consciousness. We should get to a point where union members, when they want community support, they immediately think of DSA. After the UPS strike of 1997, the president of the AFL-CIO, not a very radical guy, John Sweeney, he said, quote, "You could make 1 million house calls, run 1,000 television commercials, stage 100 strawberry rallies, and still not come close to doing what the UPS strike did for organizing." So socialists need to be creating as many 1997 UPS strikes as possible.
Thank you. And we've got Cara and then Megan.
Sorry, had a little trouble there. All right, yeah, so our role really is to organize our coworkers. We need to train up and politicize folks who aren't yet socialists. And we shouldn't be afraid to tell our coworkers, like, hey, I'm a socialist and that's cool as hell. Join me. I work as a bartender at a distillery here in Louisville. And I don't shy away from telling my coworkers that I'm a socialist and I'm in DSA and that they should join too if they agree with any of the things that I talk about, because I'm open about it. I have these conversations with my coworkers. And I think it's critical that we need to do that, and that we all do this. We communicate, whether we're in a union or not. We need to be talking with our coworkers, organizing our coworkers, both, to potentially join a union, right, if possible, to join a rank and file caucus, or to just organize against a fight on your boss. Now, I will say too that the Groundwork labor platform, we state that we need to bring our coworkers into the struggle. We need to, whether that's our union siblings as well, into the shop floor struggle to fight and to shift the balance of power away from the bosses and towards the workers. We need to bring new energy and new militancy to our labor movement, to our workplaces, to our unions. And we need to also be growing union density. We need to be building more. I know right now in the US, we're sitting just above 10%. That's just not enough. So we need to be continuing to grow and unionize and activate our workplaces and grow union density and the rank and file movement in the United States.
Thank you so much, all. I learned something about strawberry rallies. Oh, Megan. Megan, sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, my answer is fairly short. DSA's role in the labor movement is to promote labor activity that actively organizes the working class for the purpose of collective class struggle. And our theory of class struggle is socialism. Our job is to make more socialists. And the way we should approach labor is to make more socialists. So when we ask questions like, is it successful that 50% of rail workers have paid sick leave? My reframing of that question would be, well, did we make some rail workers socialists? Like, did we make any? And one, I don't actually think we know an answer to that question, which is a real failure of just as organizers. Why aren't we finding out when people join our org, what brought you here? Why are you here? What do you want to do here? How can we tap you into work? So yeah, I mean, I think that should be always the question we ask. Are we making socialists with this labor activity? And if the answer is no, then it might not be a place we want to spend our resources. If the answer is yes, the question of is it a win sometimes looks different, and that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Thanks, panelists. On to the next question. In DSA's labor work, what do you see as the balance between solidarity with existing trade union struggles versus providing a socialist vision for the labor movement? And should we be building rank and file caucuses in unions or specifically socialist caucuses? We're going to do 1 minute each, 4 speakers, Alex, Laura, then Philip, then Melina. So Alex.
All right. In terms, I mean, I think this question is a little kind of treats DSA like it's kind of a union, but we're not. And I think the main thing for us to do is, like, I think it was said by a lot of folks, talk to our coworkers, talk to our neighbors, talk to our people, and figure out what's going on where they're at. In terms of a vision, do we want to build? No, we want our people to join And if it's possible, run for leadership. If it's, when available, where applicable, we want our people to be actively talking outside of their own circles and growing from there. I don't think we need to be getting into the business of developing caucuses to go into unions. That's going to create a mess, I think. I think we need to really assess where our people are and encourage and uplift those folks there, because you need everyone. I alluded to it earlier. It's the whole kitchen sink approach where you need to talk to, because it's going to have, for a union to be successful in anything and any of the demands to make a contract better, they got to be working as a whole across the board. One thing that was fairly impressive here recently, we saw the Screen Actors decide not to challenge their president and put all their energy into this fight that they're in right now, which I think was very important and something that should be looked at towards the future, because that's what really matters. Outside of us. Yeah.
Okay, just a follow-up question, Alex. So it sounds like you do not agree with the rank and file strategy, which calls for going into unions and building rank and file caucuses, which is DSA's adopted labor strategy. Do you not agree with that strategy? You got to unmute, sorry.
All right. No, I don't. I think, this came from Solidarity once upon a time. I think the rank and file strategy is workerist. It's I'm not a big fan because it ignores the entire world of unorganized labor. We just mentioned 10% or so is union workforce right now. We got to really focus on organizing the unorganized. We have immigrants and refugees. Immigrants make up 17% of the working class, and this is the first time it's mentioned tonight. And that's consistently ignored section of the workforce. And unless someone is there, one of us speaking up, we're not going to hear it. It sure isn't in the consensus resolution. Fortunately, I think there is an amendment to address it, but that's sort of a big point. 17% working class folks, we need to talk to them in their language, and that's important going forward as well.
Okay, thank you for the follow-up. Laura, asking you to unmute now.
So I really agree with what was said earlier about how, as socialists, our goal is not merely to support what a majority of workers already think, but also to demonstrate to the majority that our ideas can win, even in moments when they're only held by a minority. So certainly we should be open socialists at work if possible, and talking about our ideas of class struggle, and in a way that is inspirational and helpful rather than preachy. And you could consider our DSA industry networks a form of socialist caucus, because socialists are working together to influence their unions from the inside, like as workers. But in terms of caucuses that we promote inside our union, we should create non-sectarian reform caucuses because we want our coworkers to trust us and adopt our ideas about bottom-up power and about being adversarial with the employer first and foremost. That is more important than promoting the socialist label, and in fact, prioritizing the socialist label before you've established some credibility can really backfire.
Okay, Philip, sorry, asking you to unmute now. Thank you, Laura.
We have 1 minute.
Yes, 1 minute.
Okay. I think we need a balance of both of all these things. Of solidarity and trying to provide a socialist vision and leadership for the labor movement. I think I'll give an example. I'll call out Laura's chapter. I think Portland DSA has really done a phenomenal job of doing model labor solidarity, of showing up each and every time. We did that in Seattle with the Starbucks workers. I think we did one of a really good Starbucks workers solidarity campaign. We launched the Venti Solidarity Twitter account, if people have followed that. And we did just consistent solidarity and built a lot of relationships and support. We've done that with other workers in Seattle, homegrown workers. But we also need to recruit workers to DSA. And as DSA members are rooted in their unions, it's important that we, in a constructive way, not in a preachy way, like was said, but we do need to be open and clear about our politics of class struggle unionism and presenting a socialist vision of a rupture with capitalism. And I think that means also building broad rank and file class struggle caucuses, but within that, socialists being organized to work together in a collective, organized way to help lead those caucuses.
Thank you, Melina.
Can y'all hear me clearly? Because I was having, okay, sorry. Yeah, so I think the balance there needs to be that we need to work within the existing trade union struggles as a stepping stone to providing that socialist vision. Like, I don't think there needs to, I don't see it as a versus, I don't see it as an either or thing. I do think, I mean, with a lot of socialism, it's all stepping up to providing the socialist vision. And then I think that we should be in rank and file caucuses. I think that creating only socialist caucuses is going to provide it's going to create a separation that does not need to exist. I think that we need to be entrenched in not only rank and file caucuses, but also existing struggles. I don't agree that we should be seeing them as two separate things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Dropping the next question here. Some comrades have raised concerns about tailing or the limitation of DSA work to labor solidarity work only, as opposed to also providing socialist political leadership for the labor movement. Is tailing an issue in DSA? We have 1 minute each from two speakers, Megan and then Cara. So Megan, asking you to unmute now. Megan.
Yeah, so again, this is going to depend on the situation. For example, just to get specific for a change, DSA supporting the Teamsters strike is awesome. It's we're taking cues from the union. So I guess by definition we are tailing, but that's fine because we have this strategic opportunity to support and to magnify this potentially historic moment, right? This is gonna be probably a very big strike, and we have an opportunity to be out there, to be on those picket lines, to be making those relationships, to be bringing tacos as our comrades in LA do. We can activate people and become those sort of reliable key supporters. There have been sort of labor related actions that we've done that didn't create any socialists. I would give the PRO Act as an example of that. I don't think we recruited a lot of people through that. That doesn't mean, oh no, let's all like drag the PRO Act forever. It just means like, hey, let's be analytical about this. Did it work? I'm not sure it did. So what can we change and do better next time?
Thank you, Cara.
Yeah, I think our primary strategy here is really that ensures that we aren't tailing is by activating members, DSA members as rank and file workers and union members and getting active in their union and taking leadership. Really important for DSA members to be taking leadership in their union to help steer the direction of the locals. I'm going to mention a little bit of what Megan just said was actually slightly incorrect. I do think that there actually are DSA members at the fight, at the head of the fight within Teamsters right now through TDU, that are helping shape and like drive these demands forward. Right now, like literally right now, the $25 an hour for Teamsters UPS workers is actually that's a TDU demand, and Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters more not like the international listened to that demand and is following through on that demand. So this just shows the importance of having DSA members at the front, at the top, being active and being engaged and militant within their unions. So I do just want to mention that very clearly. Labor solidarity is also very, very important. It's a really good way. Okay, sorry, I know it's time, so I'll go ahead. I'll stop. I think I made my
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. This has been great so far. I'm really excited to have everyone. So final question. Dan, go ahead and read this last question of this section.
Yes, so this is a question for everyone with 1 minute to respond, please. What has DSA done well in its work with within the labor movement, and what do you believe are the most essential areas for future work? What, if any, changes do you think we need to make? We'll go to Alexander and then Philip.
Awesome. Thank you for that one, Dan. So I think it's been said over and over, EWalk. So I think that there's clear consensus there, and I'm pretty optimistic that the incoming NPC, regardless, will definitely support that work, and we will definitely want to see more of that. EWalk, the strike support is also mentioned. Down here in Florida, we're in a 64-36 Trump district, very red, but we have hooked up with the Teamsters. There's 3 different facilities in our county We've showed up to the strike support, the practice pickets rather, and they know DSA is here in town where it wasn't before. And now we got solid contacts with the Teamsters on their local e-board. So that's pretty awesome. More of that, more face-to-face contact with folks that we could get out there is awesome. And the second part is any changes, I think that I sort of alluded to it, is we ignore the immigrants and refugees and migrant labor force. Again, at least 17% of the working class. That is huge. That is an untapped folks who haven't heard our message necessarily. We don't speak to them in their languages. That was one of the things I took from the ALU victory in Staten Island, was that there was a bunch of immigrants who worked there, and they would talk to them in their language and communications. That's something we should do, and I want to do it by making orienting to Latinx communities a priority. Thank you.
Philip and then Melina.
I think the Pro Act campaign had its limitations, but it was a campaign where the whole organization, or where there was an effort to get the whole organization involved, and I really appreciated that aspect. I think that was valuable. And DSA was able to be a public force to bring the issue forward in unions, develop pressure on some electeds, and mobilize our forces. So I thought that was a positive step. I think we've done fantastic work around Starbucks organizing, and I've been proud of the work my chapter has done on that. I think the focus on support for UPS Teamsters with the Strike Ready campaign is really excellent. However, I do think it should be combined more with a strategy to help develop and openly organize for a consciously class struggle wing within the labor movement, within those unions, within the Teamsters, and with a clear socialist current as part of that. I don't think we can rely on Sean O'Brien. I think we can support him when he takes good steps forward, but we can't rely on him, and we need to build our own independent base and actively recruiting workers and unions and unorganized workers into DSA.
Melina?
So, I mean, what are we doing well? I love our solidarity work. We are amazing at showing up at picket lines, and I love every single one that we do. And then I'm not really sure how it's going for everybody else, but in Detroit, we're pretty well connected with unions here, and have been able to connect workplaces that are organizing with unions that help them with their unionization efforts, and we've seen varying levels of success to that. And I think that's great. I think that us using our connections is really good for helping those workplaces. For future work, I mean, we got to organize the unorganized. I really think that we need to do more. EWOC is going to keep coming up. Let EWOC cook, I guess. I really want to. I want to see more workplaces being organized. I mean, I love the Teamster stuff that's happening, but I would like to see more coffee shops and stuff like that. Meet people where they're at. And then for changes, I mean, I do think that we should. Our work is so often siloed. I would like to see more collaborative projects like the Pro Act. And yeah, thanks.
And then we'll do Laura and then Cara.
We should be extremely proud of the DSA for UPS campaign and how it has encouraged socialists to take great union jobs and organize there for the long haul. And it's also educated our members about strikes and how to engage with unions as non-members. I think my chapter, Portland DSA, has been a model of how to do strike support. We are known as the go-to solidarity organization in the Portland area. A baker from Nabisco once described our Saturday rallies during their strike as going to church. And the Oregon Federation of Nurses and Health Professionals has donated $10,000 to our chapter for the past 3 years in a row because, in their words, DSA actually helps them, unlike the Democrats. And so nationally, our task is to devote more resources to this work because it takes an incredible amount of preparation to pull off. It's unacceptable that we only have one full-time labor staffer. We also need to start to integrate our labor work with our electoral strategy, perhaps by recruiting union organizers to run for office.
Cara?
Yeah, I think a lot of what comrades have already mentioned is basically what I was going to say too. We've done a lot of really great work in solidarity actions. We've been able to help raise tons of money for local unions. Actually, looking at LA right now, the snack list is getting called out on the Writers Guild of America's newsletters for DSA, saying DSA is helping us in a newsletter to their entire membership and supporters. That's incredible. That's really, really great. I think that there's still, again, Teamsters, the work that's going on in the logistics sectors cannot be understated. It's absolutely critical. The work that our comrades, especially those who are DSA members and in TDU, are helping push this contract negotiation forward with UPS is really fantastic to see. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunities. As I mentioned before, about 10% of Americans are in unions. That's American workers are in unions, and that's just at an unacceptable level. We won't be able to grow and do the things that we need to do with that level of density. So I do think we need to organize more. I think that the service industry is a really key area to organize. Service industry, I'm a service industry worker, and the work that we do can get pretty exploitative sometimes. And so I think it's really critical, and especially here in Louisville, Kentucky, where there's a big event that relies on hospitality and service workers. I think there's a great opportunity to have a really strong socialist background there. And I know it's time, but I think there's more opportunity to grow, especially in the service industry.
And Megan, and then Rashad.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm gonna just join the club of big snaps for EWOC. It is very cool. It's one of the cooler things we do as DSA. I also want to say that, I think a campaign that's been really cool, and it's already been brought up, is the Starbucks campaign. But one of the reasons that I think it's really cool is because I was an organizer in a chapter. Southwest Louisiana, like Clay Higgins is the congressman. Like it is it is as hostile as you can imagine. Union density is like, I don't know, it's like 5% or some, super low thing. It's rough. But that gave us a labor campaign we could do, which we never really had a labor campaign we could do before. We didn't have enough people to really kind of send a bunch of people into a shop. It was just always like, who are we supporting? There were never any picket lines or strike. So it gave us this opportunity to do that. And I think that's really valuable because it also gave us an opportunity to bring in some new members from the baristas, right? Like that's our goal. Our goal is to create new socialists. Yep. Okay, I'll just stop.
And Rashad.
DSA's labor work pops off, and it's because it's inclusive of all the different types of workers in our organization. Workers who can commit to long-term organizing as strategic strikes of struggle can support our rank and file strategy. Workers who aren't looking to change jobs but organize where they are can get support from EWOC, like I did last year, when our EWOC organizer helped us win a living wage of $20 an hour and fight for equal pay for equal work. And workers who aren't focused on organizing at work right now can still get plugged into our strike-ready efforts. Doubling down with financial and people power resources around these efforts is essential. And I know where those resources can come from, by not endorsing candidates who've clearly shown no interest in advancing DSA's full platform, or candidates that have clear red flags, like not even wanting to identify as socialist.
Great, thank you all.
Okay, that concludes section 2. We're running about 20 minutes, 22 minutes behind. Now we have 30 minutes of extra time, but we're moving on to the NLC, the National Labor Commission consensus resolution and amendments theme. Now I'm going to edit this first question just to save time. The question originally is, how do you view the NLC consensus resolution, and what part do you think what do you think are its most important parts? Do you disagree with any part? I'm just going to call to move forward. Does anybody want to raise their hand and disagree with one part of it? If not, we'll move on to the amendments. Okay, I see Alex first. We'll take a few. Alex, go ahead, 1 minute.
Yeah, well, I guess it's addressed by an amendment, sorry, but it's the idea of paying elected leadership. I think it's a recipe for disaster, and it's going to up the caucus conflict that exists in the organization. I think it's one of the biggest fights we have seen on the NPC is over who is hired by DSA. So ultimately, I think if we're looking at positions where folks are going to become staffers, it kind of murkies the line between the staff union, volunteer leaders. So I think it's that part of this proposal is almost, I don't want to say it's a poison pill, but for me, it's an ultimate no unless that amendment passes. And I think as with experience on national leadership, it's the bottom lining of the work you're supposed to do, following up, contacting, using the list, what we do at the chapter level. So the fact that I don't think it's a position that should be paid. We need to have dedicated members who want to participate and do the work of the organization without having to be an employee of the organization. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Laura for a follow-up and then to Philip.
That part of the NLC consensus resolution is one of the most important parts. Currently, we rely on all volunteers to do an incredible amount of work for big campaigns. If labor is truly our priority, it is not acceptable that everything has to go through people who are also working 40-hour-a-week jobs. We need to let the people we have elected and that we trust to do this political work do the work. And the reality is that somebody is making those choices on a day-to-day basis. Not having paid elected leadership doesn't change that. It just makes it so whoever is making these decisions is not accountable to members. And so we should really replicate the way parties around the world do this. They elect leadership that they trust, and they are paid to do it on a part-time or full-time basis.
Thanks, Philip.
I think it's I think it's the best of the consensus resolutions. And I also want to say I strongly agree with what Laura just said about the staff position. But I think the consensus resolution is the best of the consensus. It's a step forward. But I think it's good that it talks about class struggle unionism, but I think it's underdeveloped and should be expanded on more. I think it's related to a theme I've sort of heard in the discussion today. I think there's been a certain flattening of political differences within the labor movement, like unions are good and we should support them. There's a real political battles taking place in the labor movement. Most unions have a class collaborationist strategy. The idea of class struggle unionism is not the majority trend in the labor movement. It requires being organized in a conscious and systematic way to fight for that. And I think we can be more, I think the resolution could be sharper on that about how we organize to combat trends towards bureaucratization, business unionism, and labor liberalism, and building broad, big tent class struggle union caucuses, but within that being very clear about our socialist politics and linking our trade union work to a socialist vision of society against all forms of oppression. I wish I could go into that more, but we'll come back to it maybe.
Okay, no, anybody, final call for anybody to speak against anything in the consensus resolution. Ori, you're taking this next question. Go ahead.
All right, so this question is for Cara, and then we'll have some opportunity for people to respond. So the question is about the Groundwork Slate submitted the amendment to the consensus resolution called for a DSA ready to move in the labor movement. So could you tell us what you hope the amendment will accomplish for 1.5 minutes?
But there's a second part of that question, Ori. The second part of the question is, if you could choose the compensation of the NLC co-chairs, how much would you pick? And to the best of your ability. Sorry. Got to unmute you. There you go.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry. I was like, I'm trying to respond. Okay, so yeah, I hope that this amendment will just help expand the support that the NLC currently gives to chapters by helping chapters better identify and connect more cohesively in their local labor movements. And that would be through expanding of mapping and providing labor movement mapping workshops and trainings. And by sharing the data that the NLC collects through their labor surveys. I think that the labor surveys have been really great so far. I hope that they continue to do that and share the information that is out there. And I think I think this amendment will help better ensure that DSA is embedded in the labor movement because of that. I hope it will also help cohere and tie the labor and socialist movements together. Regards to the paying NLC co-chairs, the amendment does clarify that we're going to explore this option. I'm a co-chair of a national priority campaign that is actually we're on monthly calls with the NLC. I work with the NLC as much as possible. And we put in a lot of work. All of us put in a lot of work as co-chairs of a national priority campaign. But let's also be really real. We're currently in a budget deficit, in a deficit. We need to be looking at what is feasible, what is possible, and what might be the best solution, especially in regards to the fact that we do have an amazing labor staffer who's helping our chapters so much. So it's not that we shouldn't be paid for the work that we do. I absolutely agree with that. But we need to be really thoughtful about how that payment and that compensation really happens. In addition to that, the NLC co-chairs are elected by the NLC body, which is great. Okay, I just want to clarify one more thing. I think that if the NLC co-chairs are paid, I think that they should also be elected by the convention, which is the highest body of our organization.
One quick follow-up question. Do you have an idea in your mind of if you would choose compensation for the NLC co-chairs at all, or think they should be fully volunteer? Henry. I'm kidding.
I think we need to explore what payment looks like. I don't know the ins and outs of our budget. I think we need to look at that really strategically. We need to be really, be very straightforward on that. But I mean, ideally, yeah, people should be paid for the work that they do. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. So it's just that we need to be thoughtful about what that looks like. And I don't have a number off the top of my head, but I think we would need to look very closely at the budget and think and have a fundraising plan to help make sure that we can continue to grow our budget so we can continue to support the work that our organization is doing across the board.
All right, is there any panelists who would like to speak against this amendment? Please raise your hand. Not seeing any.
Okay, let's move on. Nobody. Okay, the next question is for Philip. The Reform and Revolution Caucus submitted the amendment, Our Program for Union of Democracy. What do you hope the amendment will accomplish? How will it practically work? Let me unmute you, sorry, and then I'll post that. Go ahead, Philip, 1 minute.
Yeah, as I said before, I think it's a strong resolution, but we put forward this amendment to try to strengthen it further. There's a program in it, which I appreciate, for democratic principles for unions. But I think, and I agree with all the principles in there, but I think it's quite limited and needs to be developed further. So for what, as we as socialists should be fighting for, I mean, it calls for members for votes of members to decide contracts. I agree. Most unions already have that, and we need to. I think that's too limited just to stop there. We need to talk about how members can be actively involved in setting the whole contract strategy, contract action teams. We add in the amendment that there should be a vote of striking workers to decide whether to suspend or end a strike. Too often, union leaders just call off strikes, say we have a tentative agreement, the strike's over, and that creates a de facto. Anyway, I don't have time to get into it. The right to recall all officers at all levels, the right to recall union officials and elected officials in our unions. And the other thing that the amendment tries to deal with is how should DSA relate to reform leaders? I think it's tremendous that UAW and the Teamsters have seen democratic advances and new reform leaderships, but we have to be clear, they're far from fundamentally transforming these unions. And I think DSA needs to, while wholeheartedly welcoming these developments and supporting these leaders whenever they take positive steps, We should also be prepared to openly raise disagreements if they retreat or fail to deliver. And with our strategic priority, building an independent rank and file base for class struggle, unionism, and socialist politics, not relying on these new leaders.
Okay, thanks. Next question is for Rashad. Rashad, I'm going to unmute you first. Marxist Unity Group and Reform and Revolution and some other caucuses signed on to several caucus amendments together. Marxist Unity Group chose not to sign on to this one. Is there a reason why? Do you support this amendment? Or does MUG support this amendment? You're unmuted.
While I can't speak to whether or not MUG supports the amendment, it didn't come up in our internal deliberations in terms of what we were prioritizing amendment season. A lot of them are going around, but what I can do is unequivocally say that I do support this amendment because I do think it adds much needed clarity and expansion to that program for democracy. And Philip laid everything out very well, so I would just build on that. Is I also supported Philip and Jesse from Reform and Revolution to help implement it because they're two people who know how to get the job done in their respective fields, from Philip being one of the leaders for the fight for $15 minimum wage to Jesse out in Portland doing phenomenal work with, like Laura was saying, making it a model for strike solidarity, and learned a lot from Jesse yesterday about bringing Teamsters into the organization. So again, I support it because it adds that much needed clarity and expansion and only serves to beef it up. And I also support Jesse and Philip to be some people on the NPC that can help to implement it.
Thank you so much. Now, would anyone like to speak against this? Alex, we'll go to Alex and then we can have another comment. Alex, go ahead.
I'll be really brief. I think the main problem with it is the whole idea of programmatic unity and having a platform that people look to. I think at the last convention, before when we debated the platform, it's in the notes. I said it's going to be useless, albeit harmless. I was wrong about the harmless part. What we saw after convention was that the platform has been used as a wedge whenever convenient. And that's what we get out of programmatic unity. You create this whole thing where you try to program people to be thinking a certain way, which, as you've heard me tonight, I'm not fond of. I think we need our folks, our members, our independent, free-thinking folks. They came here, they saw the independent Bernie Sanders leading the charge to reinvigorate the socialist movement in this country. And I think we need to see how he's handled it. And what would Bernie do? It has to be a lot more in DSA's forefront, especially our leadership, because I think we get ahead of ourselves and we think we know a little bit more than the guy, when I think I got a lot to learn from himself. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else want to come in on this? Seeing none, I'll kick it back to Philip. Philip, would you like to reply to that?
Sure. I think it's a straw man to say there's going to be like some sort of robotic, mechanical, artificial imposed unity or discipline. I think we need a robust democracy where we have different views and minority views are fully respected and aired and raised openly. I don't think working groups should be shut down for raising minority or oppositional views like our last NPC did. But I think we do, as a democratic organization, should be able to come together and take majority decisions of what we stand for, have political coherence, and articulate what a majority of us democratically decide, and organize around that. And within the labor movement, I think we also, there's other forces who are well organized. Again, there's this flattening of the labor movement. There's a pro-capitalist, class collaborationist, and labor liberal leadership in the labor movement, which does not support the kind of, even the minimal democratic reforms in the current draft, much less a more robust program of workers' democracy. And if it's going to happen, we need to get organized and fight for it, and that requires we take a stand.
Ori?
All right, so this is the last question for this section, and then we're moving on to audience questions. So again, for Cara with a Groundwork Caucus amendment, we are workers, DSA, and a resurgent labor movement. And then I'll also ask Laura to speak on this as well for 1.5 minutes each. It deletes the line that says, DSA rejects a strategy that prioritizes building relationships within the union establishment, thereby calling for a closer relationship with union leadership. So how should we relate to union leaderships and bureaucracy? Starting with Cara.
Well, thank you. I want to just quickly mention the Groundwork slate is in fact a slate. We are not a caucus. I just want to be clear on that. I know it's semantics, but gotta be clear. So yeah, I will say that this amendment here is not actually inherently mentioning that we are going to have a closer relationship with union establishment. I'm going to be very clear with that. This amendment also still very clearly lines out and keeps the language in here that says that it's going to prioritize building relationships with rank and file members, supporting them in efforts to challenge for union leadership, and also adding the fact there that we need to be continuing to grow and support rank and file leaders and movements. So this is by no means like saying we need to work with union establishment. Now I want to be also a little bit semantic here, but what does establishment mean? Is establishment in this language meaning union bureaucracy and more business unionism? Is that what that amendment is trying, or what that consensus resolution is trying to be clear on? And if so, then we should clearly state that it's against business unionism. So this here is really the striking of that language is allowing for a more comprehensive look at what the labor strategy we need to have in DSA is. I'll give a short example of what's happening here in Louisville. And we've developed a really fantastic relationship with ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union. And that relationship at this point is with the president of the local. The president of the local is a rank and file leader. She was recently interviewed by Jane McAlevey. She is an incredible, she is still driving a bus right now, working and running her union. That's fucking incredible. But by the language that was in this original consensus resolution, it doesn't allow for that flexibility to be able to work with strong rank and file leaders who just so happen to be a president of their local. So this is what this resolution or this amendment, apologies, is trying to get at a little bit more, is to be able to provide a more comprehensive look at our labor strategy.
Okay, and that's time. And let's see, let's go to Laura.
I don't think Cara has sufficiently explained why this amendment is necessary. We should remember that DSA once prioritized courting prominent labor leaders, and it should be explicit that we are not going back to the old days. The labor movement establishment and the local unions within it are almost always risk-averse and uninterested in, or even hostile to, putting members in the driver's seat. But even if they weren't, like in the example Cara gave, even if they were all bleeding heart communists, they don't have power on their own. Everything we want to accomplish, every campaign we hope to win, depends on masses of class warriors going to battle. Now, it's certainly true that relationships with key leaders can help us reach rank and file members. And it's not true that the base resolution prevents us from doing that. I challenge anyone to show me the language that would do that. And if we hope to form coalitions with unions or be invited to support their struggles, we should avoid unnecessarily alienating powerful decision makers and individuals that workers regard as a leader. But there will be moments of conflict, and we need to prepare to sacrifice our sway with insiders in order to support democracy, militancy, and leadership development among workers. Like this happened in Portland when a union's executive staff began planning their own events and excluding DSA from collaborating with the workers. And if we had been primarily invested in a legislative lobbying relationship with them, for example, we might have immediately backed off in order to not upset the staff. But because we had developed with members, that was our priority, we were able to maintain our active pre-strike support until the local ratified a contract. And one of those members is now a DSA member, and she's even going to be a delegate at the National Convention.
All right, thank you. So is there anyone else? I'm going to hold, yes, I'll have you respond, Cara, but do we have anyone else who wants to respond on this question? And okay, I'll do Alex. So Cara first and then Alex.
Okay, sorry, I thought you said Carol first. Okay, real.
Oh, she did. Sorry. I'm unmuted in the wrong direction. Go ahead.
Oh, well, it sounds like Alexander was speaking, so he can go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to make the point, it was shared in the chat earlier, but I got asked directly the question about the rank and file strategy, and it's not the official DSA strategy regarding labor. Our 2021 resolution was more of a holistic approach, including organizing the Oregon Organized, and why we have things like EWalk now. So I just want to make that very clear. And that's the point I wanted to raise in connection to this previous section. So it's not the rank and file strategy. That's not DSA's official strategy, no matter what anyone says. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, to clarify, Laura, for you, by no means am I saying that we need to be moving forward and only listening to the president, even though if they're a bleeding heart socialist or communist or whatever. That is not at all what this amendment is saying. This is not at all what is written out at all. But what it is saying is that we are prioritizing rank and file first, and that language is still there. Now, yes, we can be having these conversations and talking with the local presidents. You know, the example that I gave with ATU, it's not like we're working with her on a legislative aspect. At this point, actually, the whole reason why the relationship started is because we were giving ATU critical solidarity support for a massive contract fight that they actually won, a massive contract win, a huge win. And DSA was the only organization that was there. Our chapter was the only organization that was there the entire time throughout that fight. Then coming back around, now we're working with them on a joint effort, a joint campaign that is going to help win additional money in the mayor's budget, which right now our bus service workers have, our bus system has $0, not a single penny from the mayor's budget goes to our transit system. We're going to be working with the local collectively and the rank and file members as well on winning money that will go directly to their contract fight next year. So this is, again, something that it's cohesive, it's working together on this. It's not saying we're going to not work with rank and file workers, members. It is not at all what this amendment states. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Okay, Melina.
Yeah, I just want to offer up my support for striking out that line, because I mean, we've seen, I worry about, we have to explore the nuance of what, like Cara was saying, the nuance of what does the establishment mean? What does union leadership mean? Like, I'm concerned that we just help, well, here in Detroit, we just we fundraised a bunch of money for Sean Fain. And so now he's union leadership. Does that mean that we no longer get to work with Sean Fain, even though we did all these fundraisers for him? Yeah, and then shout out ATU here too. Their leadership, their board members, they come to our general meetings, we work with them. And so I think we just need more room for nuance. It's one line and a fairly thought out consensus resolution. And so I just wanted to offer up support for it and for Cara. Thanks.
Okay, and very briefly, Philip, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I really disagree with this amendment in striking that language. I think it reinforces a question that came up earlier of DSA having a tendency to tail end the union leadership and just act as support troops. And I think this doesn't say we never can work with union leaders. It says it rejects a strategy that prioritizes building relationship with the union establishment, the union leadership. Where they have good policies, we should absolutely support them, but we don't prioritize our relationship with them over the importance of organizing for class struggle unionism and challenging their class collaborationist approach.
Okay, thank you. That wraps up this section. Now we are going to you in the audience. We have a Google form. I will drop it again in a second. But where is Ellie? I got to take myself off spotlight before I put Ellie on. And unmute Ellie. Ellie and Ori, take it away.
Hey, how's everybody doing? You're doing, this has been amazing. So many wonderful ideas. I'm just going to throw one. Yes, let's get some woos and some thumbs up and everything in the chat, in the comment section. Excellent. I always like to remind people, Karl Marx was very convinced that the revolution was going to happen in Germany and England, and he was wrong. So even a very good socialist can do great work and just be wrong about some things. So let's always, keep that in mind. But people have been great. This has been wonderful. So let's see. So lots of great questions. You can still submit them, but they better be pretty damn good to hop to the front of the line. So this first question's about what have you learned from the current NPC? If you're elected, what steps would you take to talk with and gain lessons learned from the existing NPC? And yeah, we'll just take some volunteers from the host, from the speakers, please. And I just put the question again in the chat. I see Alex with a finger up, and then Cara. Alex, go ahead.
The biggest lesson is that it's a choice to interject and to introduce wedge issues that we know are going to deliberately divide the membership. It's a choice to backtrack on a decision that you made, like to get rid of the BDS working group when they screwed things up. And then you backtrack, and here we are, still debating 2 years later, the same stuff. So I think we need an NPC with the conviction to stick to their guns and to their decisions, and to not fall back for the whims and of the urges and feelings of the day and the social media crowds. We got to not fall for that. We got to stick to our guns. We got to hook up with our people, communicate, our electeds in particular, which hasn't happened as well. And again, I think that's part of the caucus conflict that is by nature trying to take over the clubhouse. I think we have to agree as 16 people who get elected to say we're going to put that shit aside and we're going to work together. Thanks.
All right, try to be very, so okay, we got tons of people on this. I'm going to take Cara and Laura because I think you were the next two. So Cara, go ahead. Can we keep this to like 30 seconds? We do have some more labor specific ones for this section. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I agree. Actually, I think with that, what the NPC needs to do this term around, what I commit to doing is to have a clear plan of action that is democratically agreed upon and decided upon by the NPC body, and then we follow through with that plan, and we work together as much as possible. We need to make sure that we're breaking down silos in the organization, that we're not allowing for small for lack of a better word, small groups to be able to just operate as if they are separate. We need to be working together cohesively as part of the organization. I think the NPC needs to be leading in that.
Great. Laura, take it away. 30 seconds.
I'm in the same caucus with Laura Gabby and Sophia Cutler, and they've really been leaders in transparency in our national organization. We really need to involve more members in the political decisions and not replicate some of the problems even in our own unions. I see a lot of parallels, when union leaders are afraid of asking members tough political questions and getting them to weigh in because you never know what kind of controversy could come up. But in a socialist organization, we should lean into it and understand that political controversies are why people are in this organization, because they have politics and they want to learn and they want to have input over things.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question is, how should the NPC assist the NLC in the next NPC term? Also, tell us your feelings on acronyms. Who wants to go first for that? Go ahead, Megan.
I'm going to try to answer this without acronyms. I think the NTC is one of our more exciting bodies. Like I think they do really cool work. I think they are combining socialist work with also like organizational work with external work, right? Like they're also working to organize tech workers and things like that. I think it's wild that we're not letting them cook. They are, do you know how expensive tech stuff is? We are getting so, like, just from a plain like logical getting stuff for free, like they are doing such cool stuff. They're doing it as members who want the organization to succeed. Let them cook.
Excellent. Rashad, go ahead.
One of the things we can do is make sure that we create new resources for them. And that's why I'm a proud signer of the NPC Leadership Pledge that has committed to working together across our political differences, with one of the key points being, how do we fix our budget deficit? We've had a lot of conversations about how do we pay people in the NLC, and that's one of the core ways that we're going to be able to continue those questions and actually get to a point where we can pay people, is closing the deficit and actually working together by committing to work together across political differences. So I'm excited to sign that pledge that Megan played a great role in leading.
Great. And Philip, you wanted to talk about the NLC?
Yes, I would pledge to really invest in prioritizing the NLC. I think the NPC needs to mobilize resources to put into action our words about prioritizing labor, even with our financial deficit currently. I think there's steps we can take to address that, like that's laid out in the pledge that I also signed on to, of really stepping up our dues drive, of fundraising. But even if we have a deficit, I think we need to prioritize our work in the labor movement, even if we have to make cuts in other areas, rather than administrative staff, or the hugely bloated pay for the national HGO. So I think there are steps we can take to really prioritize, which means also cutting back in some areas if that's needed. And I would be crystal clear, transparent. If you don't, I will vote to prioritize labor, and that may mean deprioritizing other things.
Great. Cara, I see your hands up. Do you want to give like a quick 15-second answer?
Yeah, I think I'll keep it really short. I think that the NPC needs to work really hand in hand with the NLC as much as possible. I agree to a degree with Philip. Actually, I think that it'd be really great to prioritize. We need to prioritize our labor work. And it's also part of the reason why I support the resolution that would re-up the working groups and require working groups to renew every year, because or every convention. It is really important. We need to be really strategic with the resources that we have, and labor work is really important, and NPC needs to be focused on growing the work that the NLC is doing.
Great. Ori, do you want to read this last question? It's a bit of a doozy. And and as Henry said in the chat, we want to wrap up in the next 6 minutes or so. So
by last question. Oh, okay. Okay. So if we can have 2 or 3 people, volunteers to respond. This is from one of our audience. So I'm a factory worker in an extremely right-wing workplace and often find myself talking to coworkers about things like trans rights and ongoing labor battles. What more can we do to train our members to feel more comfortable talking about these issues with coworkers and eventually organizing for mass action at their own workplace? And what role does EWOC play in this? So if we can get some volunteers, especially if you haven't spoken yet. I see Laura.
I think Melina hasn't spoken in a while.
Yeah, Melina. All right, let's start with Melina.
All right. So, I mean, amazing. Whoever is working in a factory talking to people about trans rights and ongoing labor battles, kudos to you. Trainings. Train. I mean, I just came right before this. I was at a training that was put on by Rashida's office using materials from labor notes. And one of the things was how to have conversations with your coworkers. And I think we need to invest in more of that. Make, I guess let's clone Rashida 300 times and spread her out. But yeah, and I think EWOC's role in that is I think the home for those trainings to happen, train up people on how to have those conversations. We are in a lot of ways going to battle with capitalism and the ruling class, and so that requires training. And so I look up DSA also has a lot of trainings. I don't have the link on hand right now, but we do have a website with all those trainings listed, and then hit up EWOC because they also have trainings and some really good Twitter threads. When some of the few good Twitter threads come from EWOC. Thanks.
Excellent.
All right, let's go to Laura and then Megan.
The way I learned answers to a lot of these really hard questions, and I sympathize so much with the person in this situation, it sounds very difficult, but I learned about it through labor notes trainings. And I can imagine DSA doing a campaign around trans rights where we combine that with workplace training around issues like that. And that would be so cool to do a collaboration. And that's why I support our NLC resolution and why I am against an amendment that would take away language that talks about collaborating and building labor notes. Socialists really need to make sure that labor notes is an integral part of our labor strategy, not just like attending it as participants.
All right, thank you. And Megan?
Yeah, so I also want to say trainings. As somebody who, I grew up rural, white, working class. I grew up in a trailer park in rural central New York. But like talking to people about hard things like that, yeah, it's called family dinner. It's a challenge. It's something you have to practice. It's something that you have to, like, a big part of the practicing is like learning to read the room, like when is a good time to approach these things, and that's hard. I do think it is very important that we expand trainings, but I think that it's also important not just that we be doing that through NLC. I think we need to look at the Growth and Development Committee, the GDC, that needs to be bigger, it needs to be more robust, and it needs to be more politicized. We cannot just outsource all of our trainings to sort of less political or apolitical organizations. We need these to be socialist trainings. They need to teach us how to talk about socialism with people. So we need to build those trainings ourselves as much as we can.
Thank you. And yes, Cara, if you can respond briefly.
Yeah, I will say Laura had mentioned that the amendment removes or limits the support to trainings like labor notes. I actually just dropped the actual language in the amendment in the chat. It actually does not limit. In fact, it expands the opportunities for more trainings. The labor notes trainings are incredible, but also so is the Organizing for Power series. The Organizing for Power series is a lot of the times led by Jane McAlevey and does an incredible job at helping talk through exactly these issues. Another thing I want to mention as well is that here in Louisville, there's actually a campaign that's going on right now that's called the SQUID, or Socialist Queer Youth Worker Defense. I think I said that correctly. Hopefully there's someone from Louisville who can correct me if I didn't. But the whole idea of this campaign, which is something that I very much supported, is the fact that like this is happening. Louisville, Kentucky, Kentucky just had a SB 150, which just is devastating to queer trans folk, and Louisville DSA is taking a stand by integrating these conversations in the work that we're doing, and having these trainings and these more shop floor type organizing conversations, and turning that into also how do we organize in our workplace for trans rights and for workers' rights, because trans people are workers, so like, yeah, that's all we got to say. And oh, thank you, amazing JP that you're here and hyping the SQUID campaign. The work that's going on there is amazing, and so yeah, I think it should definitely be highlighted. It's happening right now.
All right, Alex, if you can wrap it up in 1 minute, and then we're gonna close out.
Sure thing. Briefly, I was going to say the key thing, I've repeated it, is to listen to your coworkers. That's how you're going to organize your workplace, because you're going to hear what their issues are, and that's what good leaders do. The best leaders I know aren't doing their priorities campaigns. They're doing what those around them, the folks who listen to them, want to be addressed. So that's a key factor that I think we often oversee, particularly when we want to be leading the movement. The workers themselves can do it themselves. It's what Marx and Engels said, right? The liberation is going to come from the working class itself, not a party, not an organization. And that's what we have to remember. And then as far as the particular issues around trans rights in a rural area, I live in a 64-34 Trump district. We hooked up with the teachers union because they're at the forefront of that battle. They need our support. They're saying they need people to show up, and that's across the board. So I encourage folks just to show up, find out when the school board meetings are, and that's a way that we could show up to our communities, and from there build the trust, and eventually, hey, join us. You know, it's got to take time and patience, but listening is key. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, all our panelists. Let's give a big round of applause from the audience. You know, here at Working Mass, we're super excited, and the Boston DSA Labor Working Group, to have everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. This was recorded. Again, just a plug for Working Mass. We cover labor stuff in Massachusetts as DSA members in a socialist way. I wish we had a national thing. We're going to wrap it up. I do just want to give all our candidates 1 minute to close out, make the case. Why should a DSA person who cares about labor support you and your team? And so we'll go in the order that we started with. Cara.
Oh, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. If somebody else would like to go first.
Okay. Next up is Megan.
Am I unmuted? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just will plug one more time. Red Star is running a slate of 3 comrades, Sam HL from SFDSA, John L from New Orleans DSA, and you can learn more about us and our platform, which includes some of our takes on labor, but also things like our GDC amendment and our takes on electoral stuff, all that kind of stuff there at our website. So please check it out, and looking forward to seeing folks at convention.
Okay, Rashad.
The Marxist Unity Group Slate is committed to building EWOC, committed to creating new resources for the NLC, and is committed to cohering the party as forces in the labor movement in the ways that Bernie Sanders did when he tried to cohere National Nurses United and the United Electrical Workers. We need an independent Socialist Workers Party now, so let's cohere the party as forces. You can count on Marxist Unity Group Slate to do just that.
Okay, and to Alex.
Hi, everyone. Alexander Hernandez, thank you all for being here. Thank you to Working Mass and Boston folks, Massachusetts folks for hosting this. I want to keep it real simple. I'm asking folks to rank me number 1. I'm going to have a simple 4-point pledge. Oh, excuse me, while Gus is out of control over here. But my 4-point pledge is 1, invest and expand our publications. 2, more on-ramps for more members. 3, fill staff vacancies and empower members. 8, staff vacancies is an atrocity. It should not be happening. It's dereliction of duty by the current NPC. It's crazy. We got to fix that. And finally, a focus on Latinx communities. As I said before, we are not going to organize folks if we're not talking to them. And that's crucially important. As someone who's worked in the entertainment industry as well, you can see that that's without, using capital talk, they call it the market, but they don't talk to them. But we know Latinos go to the movies with their families. They read publications. They're on social media. We got to talk to them and get them to join.
Philip.
DSA is at a crossroads, and this convention faces a choice. Do we want to continue with the status quo of the political majority that has led DSA over the last period? That's been made up of Socialist Majority Caucus, Green New Deal, now Groundwork. I think North Star is part of that. If you support that, don't vote for me. I think you have excellent candidates who will represent a continuation of the status quo. If you think there's a need for a sharp change in course, then we need a course correction in DSA. I think I would ask for you to vote for myself and Jesse Dreyer as the 2 Reform and Revolution candidates, but also to elect a left-wing majority, a change in the NPC that will, I think we have the basis for a left-wing majority that would stand for moving DSA towards political independence from the Democratic Party, number 1. Number 2, a campaigning and impactful DSA rooted in the multiracial working class. And number 3, a democratic member-controlled organization, not a staff-driven NGO. And that's R&R, MUG, Bread and Roses, and Red Star that are represented on this panel. I think if you elect all of us, we will have a majority of 10, and we will include other forces, like our valuable comrades from SMC and Groundwork, but we have a stable majority to take a new direction for DSA.
Melina?
Yeah, vote for me because I am working class. And again, I think that this org really needs working class leadership. This org needs women in leadership, and the org needs women of color in leadership. And if you want to know more about where Socialist Majority Caucus stands on labor, we have this great article that I'm dropping in the chat. Everybody in Socialist Majority, we are about rank and file, but more. Not just organizing already unionized workplaces, but also let's organize the unorganized. So vote for me and SMC Slate. Thanks.
I think it's Laura next.
It's easy to say EWOC is good because it is, or we should support unions because we should. But it's another thing entirely to have the experience of actually organizing your own coworkers in your own workplace and bringing people into the socialist movement. We need more rank and file leaders on the NPC, and that's me. I hope you'll support Brennan Rose's candidates that will continue to lead on bottom-up labor power and thinking ambitiously about the impact socialists can have in the labor movement.
Thanks, Laura. And finally, Cara.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the folks who organized this call. I know organizing mass calls is really can be chaotic, so I just want to say thank you again for putting on a fantastic call. And yeah, to vote for me and all of my comrades on the Groundwork slate. We are a slate that wants a mass labor strategy that works for everybody and that works for DSA, not a one-size-fits-all strategy, but one that can be nimble and flexible and can flex to the and the local conditions, because what happens here in Kentucky is going to be very different out in Portland and in New York City, for instance. And so we need to be definitely be able to be flexible here. In the Groundwork slate, we've got a deep bench of strong rank and file organizers in our slate. And so you can count on us to be able to help cohere our strategy and organize new workplaces and organize and grow the labor movement and the socialist movement together. I'm also going to drop a link to our labor platform that explains a little bit more about what we are working for. So there you are.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here. Shout out to Ori, shout out to Dan, shout out to Ellie, our moderating team. And I think we had more people than Phoenix DSA yesterday, and I count that as a success. So let's go. Have a nice night.